I know there are people in the country who will express this sentiment, so I express it as much on behalf of other people. We believe at this point we knew absolutely nothing in advance, and we've said that several, if not several dozen times today, and here we are within minutes, I shouldn't take that back, within hours of an incident involving terrorists about which we've heard not much throughout the day, and already we have someone in the Intelligence Committee, or maybe it's through a member of Congress, pointing the finger at Osama bin Laden. I'll turn to George Stephanopoulos to talk about this a little bit, and then perhaps to talk to our defense analyst in Washington in just a moment, Tony. The skeptics just say, oh, they point the finger at Osama bin Laden.
Because it's easy, and we need a face.
Exactly.
We need a face.
We need someone to demonize.
And someone to blame, and someone to demonize, and someone to attack. And I think there'll probably be some grumbling from the Central Intelligence Agency and others in the intelligence community that information like this was frankly leaked out of the House Intelligence Committee or out of the Congress, because that's one of their big complaints consistently with the Congress. Is one of the reasons we can't trust the Intelligence Committee with this information is because the minute we talk about it, it gets out in the public domain. But I do think it does speak to something that we'll see happening in the coming days.
Before you go on to the coming days, I apologize. I don't want to hold you up except this. Do you think, from your experiences in government, that there is a tendency to blame Osama bin Laden even when there is not necessarily any basis on which to precisely point the finger at him? I don't mean that Osama bin Laden gave money to someone in the country, but within hours of this, we're beginning to point at the same man we point to in almost every instance.
I would say a tendency to find a specific target that you can blame as quickly as possible, not necessarily Osama bin Laden. But I remember very well in early 1993, after former President Bush, there was an assassination attempt against him.
Right.
The FBI and the CIA spent several weeks trying to find out who was responsible. They finally did identify people, but there was an awful lot of pressure from the people on the ground, especially to say, yes, 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 we have it. And you felt that a lot of people further back in Washington were saying, are you sure?
Yeah, I think the public is pretty actually wise about this now, because we've been through so many experiences where we thought it was Iran, and maybe it turned out to be Libya. We thought it turned out to be Libya, and then the suspect was Syria, and it turned out to be Palestine. Thought it was Palestinians, and it turned out to be an American.
And one other thing, not to discount, Peter, I'm not suggesting this is happening in this case, but you always have to be careful. Those who are doing the briefings may have an agenda of their own within the government trying to build pressure for an action they want.
Now, you were going to, before you go on to your other point, Claire Shipman mentioned that they were going to pass legislation tomorrow, which will be national legislation respectful of the day.
And support for the president.
And support for the president and support for the various government agencies. There's very quickly going to be a demand and request for doing something more than already, and money.
For much more. And whenever you have these kinds of terrorist acts, whether it was Oklahoma City or the assassination attempt on President Bush or the Khobar Towers Congress acts, remember, after TWA Flight 800, we first got those questions that were asked of every air passenger. Have your bags been with you at all times? And has anyone else, have they ever been out of your sight? That was never asked before. You'll see something far more stringent, I would guess, coming out of Congress now. Far more attempts after the Oklahoma City bombing. There were attempts to increase the FBI's wiretapping capabilities and tracing gunpowder and other kinds of ammunition, and also after Al-Khobar, more money for intelligence. You'll see that coming out of the Congress.
But you make a very good point, and we discussed it a little earlier today. I've forgotten, I think it was James Woolsey we began talking to, and pointing out that how important it is for Americans at the moment to appreciate freedoms in the country. And I think it was somebody very early in the day who quoted Edmund Burke when he talked about ordered liberty, because there will be pressure in some communities in pursuit of international terrorism to make it tougher for Americans to enjoy all of their freedoms. Do you believe that?
No question about it. After Oklahoma City, there was even an attempt to start to catalog these domestic militias in a way that we would have never done before that, and that was something, there was an outcry at the time, but I would suspect that after something like this, people will say, we're willing to sacrifice some liberties in order to get the security.
Okay, thanks, George.
From